it's the only way you can get to the other side is by having some impact. But what we're always trying to work to do is minimize the impact, and most importantly, be positioned for what's coming. And I think that's, for the four of us, that's what we're really focused on, is making sure that we're ready for whatever the next step is.
Other questions? I think we've hammered the interest and inflation, because it all kind of goes back and forth between what we've seen the last year and a half with raising rates and inflation, and now how it benefits our safe money. But other things that have come up, I know personally, we talked about a lot last year that the things that were driving the market was, we said, interest rate, inflation. We had the Russia, Ukraine, and then we had the other R, which was recession. So without getting political and defining what a recession is, because obviously that's a moving definition over the last year and a half. But we had the 2 negative quarters of GDP growth last year that historically has triggered, the official recession, if you will. But we have not entered into one officially right now, as of February. But most analysts and people that we follow and look to are kind of forecasting a slowing of this economy and heading into a recession at some point in 2023. And I say that because I bring that up in client meetings, and I know you guys do as well. And the first question is, well, what do we do? Do we go to cash? You just talked about how cash and interest rates are right. I mean, do we get out of everything and avoid it? And, let me pull up a chart here real quick on, stock market kind of performance, during recessions. And the reason why I point this out is, obviously history is history, and, we can't predict the future, but we've talked about it with interest rates, with inflation. Markets are leading indicators, right? So the data that we're talking about and the points that we're looking at, the market's already priced in and aware. So historically speaking, most of the downside that we experience from a market performance happens prior to or early stages into the recession. And so regardless of whether or not we would go into recession today or in 6 months, most of us believe that the downside that we experience in that recession has already happened. And in the case of last year, we had a pretty down year. So I think most of us feel that would be kind of where that downside was experienced, and that during the recession and coming out of the recession, it's not as painful, and it can actually be, rather beneficial for the market. And that's, again, because it's a leading indicator, right? So the economy shrinks, the economy slows down, and eventually, once that kind of gets behind us, it starts opening back up, and consumer spending picks up, and the growth picks up, and that's what benefits the stock market. So it kind of, the underperformance or the downside precedes the actual recession historically, and then during and coming out of them, we actually see some potential growth and upside in these markets. And so though we do feel that the recession is likely at some point this year, it's not necessarily a concern for panic or running to cash. And things we kind of look to is more of the depth and the duration of the recession, right? Is it going to be -4.5%, -5% GDP growth for 2 years, 3 years, or is it going to be more of that -0.1 or -1% for a couple quarters to a year? So those are the things that we're looking at that can maybe have more of an impact on the actual market. It is more the depth and the duration of the recession rather than whether or not we go into a recession.
If and when we do go through a recession this year, it'll be the most telegraphed recession in U.S. history.
Correct.
We have been waiting for a recession for a year, and everybody is on pins and needles wondering exactly what Kyle just described: length, depth, shallow, not, whatever. And so a way I just described it with the client, I thought this kind of made sense, is we've all seen that, and I may have even mentioned this on the last podcast. We've all seen that hurricane that when they run it on the news, the hurricane that is inevitably heading to Florida, and it's out in the Gulf. Oh my God, it's a Category 5. It's going to hit Florida in 5 days or something like that. Well, every single resident in Florida at that point in time has made a decision on what they're going to do. Are they going to stay? Are they going to board up? Are they going to leave, et cetera? So while it's floating around in the Gulf, they're reacting and they're making their decisions. So by the time it actually hits land, no one at that point is like, I wonder what I should do. They've already decided one way or the other. And so this is a very similar situation. So we're watching. Last year, we're pricing in this Category 5 hurricane that's going to come through. Everyone's made a decision. The clients that want to ride this out and stick through their investment portfolios, that they're going to do it through thick or thin. Those that wanted to get more conservative most likely already have. And so by the time this recession actually comes, it'll be like, oh, all right, well, it wasn't Category 5. It potentially is Category 2. I'm going to go back to work. And then life will go on. and that's kind of what I'm anticipating this year.
That's a pretty good analogy, though, because there will be destruction. That's still the design of raising interest rates. They're trying to push down spending and investments, and that's their main tool, main lever is short-term interest rates. So it's the only way you can get to the other side is by having some impact. But what we're always trying to work to do is minimize the impact, and most importantly, be positioned for what's coming. And I think that's, for the four of us, that's what we're really focused on, is making sure that we're ready for whatever the next step is.
Well, and continuing on that analogy, that ties back into, talking about boarding up or taking precautions or plans for a hurricane, right? Well, that's the whole point of financial planning, right? Is our financial plans don't assume this market's going to go straight up every single quarter, every single month for the rest of your life, right? We bake in assumptions that, just like history, we're going to have recessions, we're going to have corrections, we're going to have 20% years that are down, 20 years that are up. And so that's part of the planning is having a plan, knowing that these events will happen, not knowing if it's today, tomorrow, and 5 years, but then also making sure that as we're preparing, going through and coming out of it, there's activity and actions that need to take place on an account level, depending on each person's situation. And I know from sitting in the office with all you guys that everybody here is very proactive. We don't just sit back and do nothing. It's reactionary when we need to, but also not overreacting, and allowing the plan to take its course and run its course, and keeping people informed and up to date.
Yeah, and like we've been telling clients, recessions are part of market cycles.
Yep.
Just like weather patterns. I mean, you're gonna have these situations. The leading indicator thing we've talked about now twice. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure, the next roundtable, and probably everyone until we're out of this business, because it's a difficult concept. Said these things got priced in as soon as markets could see that we might possibly be in for inflation and a recession. All this stuff gets priced in, and that's basically a lot of 22. And now we're waiting to see if it's going to be worse than is already priced in. And, hopefully not. It doesn't look like it at this point.